So, I want you to picture this.
Yeah.
You have a highly disciplined German student, right?
Okay, yeah. Someone who really hits the books.
Exactly. They spend years, literally years, memorizing Chinese grammar, uh, studying every textbook they can find.
Right.
But when they open their mouth to speak, they still sound, distinctly like a foreigner. It's just obvious.
Yeah, they just can't shake that accent no matter how hard they try.
Right. But then an African student walks into the exact same class, and almost effortlessly, they naturally speak Mandarin with these perfect native tones.
Oh, wow. That's a massive discrepancy.
It really is. It completely defies the way we usually think about hard work and study, right? Like, effort doesn't necessarily equal perfection here.
Yeah, you'd think the one grinding the grammar would sound better.
Exactly. And today's deep dive actually explains exactly why that happens. And honestly, it comes from one of the most fascinating conversations you could possibly overhear.
Yeah, it really is. We are looking at this digital sit-down, sourced directly from a YouTube interview on the channel of Emmanuel Ceress.
Manuel.
Right. So Emmanuel is an educator based in Brazil, and he's interviewing Miss Leo, who is a Chinese professor based in Beijing.
Which is just a wild geographic spread to begin with.
It is. And the timing alone kind of sets this unique stage. It's 11:10 p.m. for Emmanuel down in Brazil, so he's late into his night.
Getting ready for bed, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, it's the dawn of a brand new morning for Miss Leo in China.
That 12-hour time gap creates this almost, liminal space for a conversation. You have one person wrapping up their day in South America looking for broader meaning, and another just starting their day in Asia.
Totally. It sets a really specific vibe.
It really does. And the mission for us today is to unpack Emmanuel's specific skill here, because he has this incredible ability to talk to the whole world.
He really does. He takes what could easily just be, a dry Q&A about lesson plans.
Oh yeah, like how do you grade papers?
Right, exactly. But he turns it into this masterclass on global education, the borderless nature of modern curriculum, and the surprising biological mechanics of how the human brain actually acquires language.
Which is the part that blew my mind. But to really see Emmanuel's skill at work here, we have to look at the massive contrast in their professional lives.
Oh, definitely, because they are worlds apart, literally and professionally. So Emmanuel runs this English course in Brazil called CIS.
Right.
And he manages a whole team of teachers. He has over 500 students. I mean, he is operating at scale.
Yeah, 500 students is no joke.
It's huge. He's trying to figure out how to effectively deliver a foreign language to the masses in South America. He has to think about broad accessibility.
Right, whereas I was looking at the breakdown of Miss Leo's student roster in the source material, and honestly, I didn't get her set up at all at first.
It's very different.
Yeah, because she isn't in a normal university lecture hall. She isn't dealing with massive crowds of undergrads. Like, who exactly is she teaching?
Well, she teaches in this highly specialized, almost insulated environment. It's the embassy area in Beijing.
Okay, wow, the embassy area.
Yeah, her students are exclusively diplomats working in China.
That's intense.
Very. And she and her colleagues, they aren't your standard tutors either. Miss Leo has a background in linguistics and teaching Chinese as a foreign language, plus she speaks English and German.
So she's highly qualified.
Super qualified. And her colleagues bring backgrounds in literature, philosophy, and political science. They are basically culturally immersed polyglots.
So the stakes are just astronomically different here. Emmanuel is teaching everyday Brazilians who might want to, improve their career prospects or travel to Florida or something.
Right, exactly. Practical, everyday language skills.
But Miss Leo is equipping foreign diplomats to navigate these high-stakes political and cultural landscapes in one of the most powerful countries on Earth.
Yeah, it's a totally different ballgame.
You aren't just teaching a diplomat how to order a coffee or ask for directions to the subway. You are teaching them how to read between the lines of a political negotiation.
Which means the courses have to be incredibly flexible and individualized. You can't just hand them a standard workbook. Ms. Leo explains that they rely heavily on customized planning and face-to-face interaction.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the curriculum literally bends to the specific needs of the diplomat. If they need to talk about trade tariffs, that's the lesson for the day.
And this is where Emmanuel's interviewing technique really, really shines. Because he doesn't just marvel at the difference between them. He actively looks for the structural similarities.
Yeah, he tries to find the common ground.
Right, between his massive Brazilian school and her elite Beijing embassy setup. He's kind of like like an architect looking at a sprawling suburban development and a towering skyscraper, and trying to figure out if they use the same steel for the foundation.
That's a great way to put it.
He asks about methodology, school calendars, bilingual programs. He's searching for the universal architecture of how humans actually learn.
He probes into the systems bridging these global gaps. And when you are dealing with diplomats and foreigners entering China, that system requires a strict, uncompromising foundation.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, Miss Leo makes it very clear to Emmanuel, if you are a foreigner choosing to learn Chinese, the standard is always Mandarin.
Always Mandarin, no exceptions.
Pretty much. It's the same characters, the same grammar across the board in her school.
She breaks down the geography of the written language for him, which I thought was a really crucial distinction.
Yeah, it's more complex than people think.
Right, because in mainland China, the standard is simplified characters. But in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, they use traditional characters.
And Emmanuel catches the mention of Macau instantly.
Because he's Brazilian.
Exactly. Sitting in Brazil, he knows Macau's history as a Portuguese colony.
Right, so he uses that shared linguistic history Portuguese to build a bridge right there in the interview.
That is just active listening at its absolute best. He finds the historical anchor.
It's so smart.
It is. But Miss Leo brings the conversation back to the rigorous modern standards, specifically the HSK. That's the Standardized Chinese Language Proficiency Test.
Right, the HSK.
She points out that if a foreign student wants to study at a Chinese university, they have to pass the HSK at a level 5 or 6.
And for anyone unfamiliar with that scale, HSK level 6 is basically the absolute peak of the testing system.
It is not for the faint of heart.
No. We are talking about commanding thousands of characters, being able to easily comprehend written and spoken Chinese news, and effectively expressing your ideas in both oral and written forms.
Fluently.
Yes, fluently. It is a punishingly strict standard. But I actually have to push back a little bit on this rigid standardization.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, Ms. Leo mentions that at home, with grandparents, people in China might use wildly different regional dialects or have distinct local accents, right?
Absolutely. The diversity is huge.
So, does it seem like teaching only standard Mandarin and simplified characters to the rest of the world kind of flattens the rich linguistic diversity of the country?
I see where you're going with this.
Like, it almost feels like we are erasing the grandparents from the global conversation just to make things easier for diplomats and business people.
I mean, I see why it looks like erasure from the outside. But I think you have to look at it less as erasing the grandparents and more as building a functional bridge between two entirely different worlds.
Okay, a bridge.
Yeah, we have to consider the sheer necessity of standardization in global communication. Dialects are the heart of a local culture, absolutely. But standard Mandarin is the infrastructure. It acts as the universal operating system.
Ah, I see. It's the OS for the region.
Precisely. If a diplomat from Germany and a business leader from Brazil are trying to operate in Beijing, they need a predictable, unified code to ensure nothing is lost in translation.
Especially during critical negotiations. You can't have misunderstandings there.
Exactly. And what makes Emmanuel's questioning so effective here is that he maps out this complex linguistic geography for his Brazilian audience.
He does the heavy lifting for them.
Right. He gets Miss Leo to lay out the strict rules of engagement so his listeners understand the sheer mountain a learner has to climb to play on this global stage.
Right, but if standard Mandarin and the HSK level 6 are the mountain, how are educators actually getting students to the summit?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because the tools they use, according to Ms. Leo, are not at all what I expected. I assumed a strict standard meant a rigid, monolithic, like, made-in-China textbook for everyone.
Oh, not at all. The curriculum is wildly diverse and increasingly borderless.
Yeah. Emmanuel explicitly asks her about materials, wondering if they rely purely on local content or things like Cambridge exams.
And her answer reveals just how fluid modern education has become. The materials vary entirely by the setting and the age of the learner.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, for children, she might pull materials from Cambridge or integrate European and American pedagogical systems.
But inside the official Chinese schools, she notes they use local Chinese English textbooks, which have their own specific standard logic.
Right, tailored for their national educational system.
And then the students go home, and the environment completely shifts all over again. Ms. Leo says at home, the approach is incredibly open. She utilizes the BBC, CNN, and this is my favorite part, she even puts on German cartoons for kids.
The mechanism behind using a German cartoon to teach a child in China is just fascinating.
It sounds chaotic, but it works.
It works because you are completely removing the crutch of the native language. It forces the child's brain to rely on context clues, visual storytelling, and raw cognitive adaptation to understand the narrative.
Wow.
It's an immersion tactic. Miss Leo also points out that private and key schools in China are increasingly taking this immersive route by using English to teach English.
Wait, rather than teaching it through a Chinese translation filter.
Exactly. They just drop them into the language.
It's an amalgamation of whatever works best globally. It honestly reminds me of a modern DJ mixing a track.
The DJ.
I like that.
Think about it. You take the heavy bass line of the official Chinese curriculum, right? Then you drop in a bright vocal sample from a German cartoon, and you layer the analytical rhythm of BBC News over the top.
That is a brilliant analogy.
And Emmanuel, always keeping his eye on the future, asks about the ultimate remix tool for this kind of borderless education.
AI.
Yes. They share this mutual excitement for OpenAI and specifically mention the new DeepSeek model.
And what's important to understand about DeepSeek in this context is that it isn't just a search engine.
Right. A teacher isn't just looking up a PDF worksheet.
Exactly. It is an AI model capable of generating highly targeted pedagogical materials literally on the fly.
So a teacher can tell the AI, give me a reading exercise about Brazilian geography, written in HSK Level 4 Standard Mandarin, tailored for an adult diplomat.
And it just generates it. Boom!
That completely revolutionizes Miss Leo's highly individualized teaching model. Emmanuel's curiosity about DeepSeek shows his forward-thinking approach. He is always asking how Miss Leo is going to use tomorrow's technology to talk to the world even more effectively. He understands that the friction of creating customized curriculum is just vanishing.
But, for all this talk about Cambridge exams, German cartoons, and cutting-edge AI models, the conversation takes a really sharp, unexpected turn.
It does. It shifts away from technology entirely.
Right, because the ultimate tool for processing language isn't a textbook or an algorithm. It is the raw biology of the human brain.
Emmanuel asks a seemingly simple, almost philosophical question that triggers this shift. He asks, can anyone, just as a human, study and use a language very well?
He is looking for the biological baseline. Like, what are we physically capable of?
Exactly. And Miss Leo answers by pulling out Noam Chomsky.
Classic linguistics.
Yep. She references Chomsky's theory of second language acquisition. She basically describes a baby's brain as a machine.
The language acquisition device, right?
Yeah. Yes. The LAD. Chomsky theorized that humans are born with an innate biological capacity to acquire language. Ms. Leo explains it to Emmanuel by saying the baby's brain is a machine that automatically processes information received from the outside world without any conscious effort.
The hypothetical example she gives for this is stunning. She says, imagine a baby born in China. The mother is from Germany, the father is from English-speaking Africa or maybe Iran, and the nanny speaks Chinese.
That is a lot of input.
It is. But Miss Leo explains that this baby's machine will seamlessly process all of that conflicting auditory information. That child can reach native-level fluency in all three of those languages simultaneously.
Just absorbing them as naturally as learning to walk.
Right, because the infant brain is physically wiring its neural pathways to match the auditory input.
And the striking contrast she draws here is with adult learners. When adults try to learn a language through rigorous grammar study, they are using a totally different part of their brain.
The analytical part.
Exactly. They become what she calls the perfect translator.
Ah, right. Meaning they can read the HSK Level 6 newspaper, they can write the complex diplomatic treaty, but they can almost never reach a true, effortless native level in their spoken cadence.
Which brings us back to that massive discrepancy we mentioned at the very start of this deep dive.
A German student versus the African student.
Exactly. Because Mandarin is a tonal language, the pitch, the melody, and the inflection of how you say a syllable completely changes its dictionary definition.
Which is so foreign to English speakers. In English or German, if you raise your pitch at the end of a sentence, it just means you're asking a question. Or maybe you're surprised.
Right. It conveys emotion or syntax.
But in Mandarin, a high pitch versus a dipping pitch changes the word from mother to horse.
Yeah, and you definitely do not want to call your mother a horse.
No, it is notoriously brutal for Westerners to learn.
And Miss Leo tells Emmanuel that her German students are incredibly disciplined. I mean, they study intensely, they memorize the grammar perfectly, and they know all the vocabulary.
But they still struggle deeply with the Chinese accent and the tones, right?
Yeah, because their brains are trying to logically translate the pitch. It's a mathematical equation to them.
But the foreign learners in her classes who pick up the Chinese accent and tones perfectly, and often, without even trying that hard, are students from Africa.
That blew my mind. Miss Leo explains that many native languages in Africa are already deeply musical and tonal.
They use melody and pitch to convey core meaning, just like Mandarin does.
The mechanism at play here is just profound. When these African students hear Mandarin, their auditory processing centers are already primed for tonal semantic meaning.
They aren't trying to logically translate a pitch into an emotion and then back into a vocabulary word.
No, their brains already have the biological hardware to catch the musical points perfectly.
Oh man. So learning via strict grammar, like the German students do, is basically like intensely studying sheet music. You can memorize every note, every rest, and every dynamic mark on the page.
But it's still analytical.
Right. But the African students who naturally speak tonal languages are just naturally playing by ear. They literally feel the music of the language because their brains were wired for it from childhood.
It totally shatters the assumption that brute force study is the only path to fluency. It proves that diverse global backgrounds offer completely unexpected, unique cognitive advantages.
It's beautiful, honestly.
That is. But you know what makes this moment in the interview truly special? It's how Miss Leo actually learned this fact.
Oh, right. Emmanuel asks her about it, and she reveals that this insight didn't come from a textbook or a linguistics paper.
No, it was shared with her by a highly educated woman from Uganda who works for a UN office and holds a PhD in medicine.
Just trace the chain of information that Emmanuel just facilitated there. You have a Brazilian educator sitting in his room late at night asking just the right questions to a Chinese linguistics professor in Beijing.
Who is then passing on biological and linguistic wisdom she learned from a Ugandan medical doctor working for the United Nations.
I mean, that is the literal definition of talking to the whole world. Emmanuel didn't just conduct a standard interview. He organically built this conduit that pulled high-level insights from 4 different continents into one seamless conversation.
He bypassed the small talk completely. He used his curiosity to unlock how education, technology, and human biology intersect globally.
He proved that bridging a massive geographical divide isn't about perfectly memorizing standard rules or, just having the best internet connection.
Right. It is about the quality of the questions you ask and having an openness to the wildly different ways people experience and process the world around them.
The interview actually ends with this wonderfully human moment where Emmanuel and Miss Leo wish each other one an, which is good night in Chinese.
It's so sweet. Emmanuel finally heads to bed in Brazil, and Miss Leo starts her day in Beijing.
It's a quiet reminder of the real living people behind these massive global systems.
It really leaves us with the realization that language isn't just a tool for diplomatic translation or passing the HSK. It is a physical reflection of how our brains are wired to interact with our environment.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you to mull over today, long after this deep dive ends. If human brains are originally built like these incredible automatic machines designed to effortlessly absorb the musicality of any language,
Yeah.
what hidden music are you missing out on in your daily life right now simply because you are too focused on trying to logically translate the world through strict rules and rigid grammar?